'Twas a dark and stormy night. Um, Good morning, everybody. We've got a little bit of weather going on outside, so you might get some sound effects this morning. We'll see. Oh, man. It is stormy outside. Well, if you haven't already, grab yourself a cup of coffee, a cup of hot tea, and we're going to get started. I'm kind of excited this morning because we're about to get into some more meaty Proverbs. Solomon is getting ready he's giving the opening announcements, you might say. And then he's going to get into some good stuff, and we can start talking about a few more specific issues of life. So we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 9. Just as a word of warning, I don't know what the power situation here is going to do, so we're going to give it a shot and see if we can get through the whole video. Hopefully, Lord willing, it'll all be all right. Okay, Proverbs chapter 9. I noticed yesterday that the feed was a little bit crackly. I made some adjustments. Hopefully, I fixed that. We'll find out. Proverbs chapter 9. This is kind of like an opening address to some words of wisdom. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. 7, by the way, is a divine number. So when he says her 7 pillars, he's referring to perfect wisdom. She has slaughtered her meat. She has mixed her wine. She has also furnished her table. She sent out her maidens. She cries from the highest places of the city. All right. So basically, he's saying wisdom has given you the spread. You know, the best food, the best drink, you name it. Wisdom has prepared the table for you. He's saying, come get ready to eat. She cries out from the highest places of the city, whoever is simple, let him turn in here. As for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Forsake foolishness and live, and go in the way of understanding. Come eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Now, some people out there have a funny belief about wine. Whatever you believe about that, wine as a drink of pleasure. But we need to point out here that getting drunk is a sin. It is wrong. It is something that God does not endorse. And as you'll see in some later verses, Solomon talks about the drunkard, and he's not very nice about it. So regardless of what your particular theology of alcohol is, what wisdom is saying here is that she has chosen the best drink. She has mixed her wine so that it's the best. All right. So let's get into the next verse. The next verse starts some of our Proverbs. He who corrects a scoffer gets shame for himself, and he who rebukes a wicked man only harms himself. Do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will still be wise. He will be still wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. Okay, so some preliminary words of wisdom. Solomon is saying, watch out. If you try to correct or teach somebody who is a scoffer, a mocker, to scoff is one of those it's kind of like a mocker. It's somebody who trying to think the best way to explain it. They laugh at and mock people. I guess that's just the best way to explain it. When you try to correct such a person, they're going to come back at you. Now, one thing that we need to understand, if you look at verse 8, this is our first, well, not our first, but this is okay, earlier in the lessons we talked about what a maxim is. And Solomon speaks a lot in maxims. A maxim is, and let me actually, just in case I'm wrong, I'm going to Google the definition real quick. What I've always understood a maxim to be is a general statement of wisdom, not a hard, fast rule. And you'll see why as we go through Proverbs, but I want to make sure that I'm defining it correct, that I'm using the right word. Define maxim. A short, pithy statement expressing a general truth or rule of conduct. Yep, I was using it correctly. I was using the right word. Okay, so a maxim is a short, pithy saying of a general bit of wisdom, general truth, general rule. Okay, it's not a hard. Okay, and a lot of these maxims are going to come in the form of "do not, lest you," or "do not, lest he." All right, it's kind of like it's kind of like in philosophy. You have a if then structure in logic. Okay, if you open the door, then flies will come in. Okay, that's an if then structure. If then is used for logical statements. All right, but do not, lest is used. It's a maxim. All right, if the if then structure is a logical arrangement, the do not, lest is a maxim arrangement. Okay, it's a statement of general truth. It's a rule of conduct. And what you're going to find throughout the book of Proverbs is that you're going to find there's a place where he says, do not rebuke a fool. And then in the very next verse, he says, rebuke a fool. Okay. So which is it? Do I do not rebuke a fool, or do I rebuke a fool? You know? And it's things like that. If you take these statements as hard, fast rules, they are, if you violate them, they're sin, then you're going to find yourself in a bad situation, because you're going to find yourself with contradictory ideas. Do not correct a scoffer. Later on, correct a scoffer. So which do I do? It's a rule. Solomon is introducing you to an idea that, guess what? If you do this, then this will happen. Okay? So you might say that the do not lest type of statement is a little bit of a stronger version of if then. Okay. So he says, do not correct a scoffer lest he hate you. That's a warning that if you correct somebody who mocks other people, they're probably going to turn around and mock you. And so he's saying, don't do it unless you're prepared for the consequences. Just a little side note, because we're talking about maxims and because we're talking about the do not lest structure, I do want to put in here a little side note. When Jesus, okay, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let me back that up. Jesus gives maxims as well. And if you'll notice in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus gives a maxim that people have taken as a hard, fast rule. And it's caused so much trouble in the world. Can you guess what it is? Do not judge, lest ye be judged. For with the same measure you use, it will be measured to you. Notice how the grammatical structure of that is the exact same as do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. Okay. Jesus spoke in maxims, just like Solomon. That's not saying everything that Jesus said is a maxim, and not everything Solomon says is a maxim. But where you see this do not lest structure, you need to realize that it's simply words of wisdom. It's not a command. It's not a hard, fast rule. It's more of a warning. Okay? So that's something that we need to get right off the bat, is that the book of Proverbs is full of maxims. We would be wise to heed those. That doesn't mean that we always need to follow them. It just means we need to be aware of the consequences. All right. So getting back to the text. He who corrects a scoffer gets shame for himself, and he who rebukes a wicked man only harms himself. Wicked people don't bat an eye at hurting somebody that rebukes them or corrects them. After all, they don't have the same morals as we do. They don't have the same morals as Christians. So, a word to the wise, don't try to correct somebody who mocks others, and don't try to rebuke somebody who is not a believer, who is not a Christian. Even some people that call themselves Christians, they can be wicked. So just understand that it may come with a degree of harm. All right. And then in the end of verse 8 into verse 9, rebuke a wise man and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be wiser still. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. Now, this is kind of a challenge for us because a lot of people don't like being corrected. A lot of people don't like being told they're wrong. All right. Let's flip back for just a moment at uh, well, where is it? For the beginning of Proverbs. Yeah. Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Instruction can be also translated as correction. Okay. So there's a challenge for us here. If we want to be wise, then we need to be careful that we don't despise correction, that we don't despise a rebuke. You see, a wise person wants to know when he is wrong or wants to know when she's wrong. And there's so little of that these days. So little of that. I have to confess that's something that I struggle with sometimes. And I have to remind myself on a regular basis that, when I'm being corrected, and a lot of times I will do that in the moment. Somebody will start correcting me and my blood pressure will go up a little bit, my face will get a little bit hot. And, you know, while they are talking to me, I will kind of have a little bit of a mental conversation and I'll be like, okay, all right, listen to what they have to say, see if they're correct. If they're correct, take it, learn from it, ease on down. I have to have that conversation with myself. I don't know if I'm the only one who has to have a conversation with myself, but that's just me. I have to have that conversation with myself because I don't want to be a fool. I don't want to be that person who can't take correction. I want to be that wise man who will be wiser still. All right. So that's that. All right. Verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Okay. So earlier in the book, Solomon said the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Now he's saying the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All right. Someone once said, and I don't know who it was, but I certainly didn't come up with it. Oh, goodness. Let me see if I can remember it. Yeah. Okay. They said the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is like knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that you don't put it in your salad. Okay. Tomatoes are classified in science as a fruit, but they don't taste like most fruits. Most fruits are sweet. Tomatoes are acidic. They're not sweet. um, so knowledge is like knowing a tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is knowing how to apply that it's probably not going to taste good in a fruit salad. Okay. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. When you take a position of not wanting to offend God, that's the starting point of wisdom. When you're at that place where you want to do whatever you can not to offend or hurt or grieve God. That's when you're at the beginning of wisdom. And knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Look, learn about the Holy Spirit because He is the one that will bring you understanding. He's the one that will help you to know, to discern things. All right, so wisdom is talking here again in verse 11. For by me your days will be multiplied, and years of life will be added to you. If you are wise for yourself. And if you scoff, you will bear it alone. That's an interesting statement. If you are wise for yourself. I'll be honest with you and tell you, I don't know what that means. I mean, obviously on the surface, it almost just seems like a plain, almost redundant. But the second part, if you scoff, you will bear it alone. A nugget of wisdom on that is people who mock and scoff. You know what? Let's look up the definition of scoff. I want to make sure I'm using that one correctly as well, or that I'm understanding that word correctly. Define scoff. You and I will learn together. How about that? To speak to someone or about something in a scornfully derisive or mocking way. Scornfully derisive or mocking. Wow. Okay. He says, if you are like that, you will bear it alone. What does that mean? That means that if you're that kind of a person, you're going to lose friends. You're going to be alone. Nobody's going to want to be around you. Don't be a scoffer. Don't be that person. Verse 13. All right, now we're going to have some fun. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knows nothing. For she sits at the door of her house on a seat by the highest places of the city to call to those who pass by, who go straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. As for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there and that her guests are in the depths of hell. Okay, so on the surface, that started to look like Solomon was talking about a foolish woman. But no, he was comparing, in the previous chapters, Solomon was talking from the voice of wisdom. Wisdom says this. Well, now he's saying foolishness says this. Foolishness is clamorous, is noisy, is loud, is obnoxious. Okay. She is simple and knows nothing. Okay. Foolishness, it doesn't know anything. And there's a lot of foolishness in the world. People that speak without knowledge. There's a lot of that in politics. But she invites people in. Foolishness invites people in and says, come Come, take part in me. Be simple. Be ignorant. Then it says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. You know, dishonest ways, they don't lead to anything good. The whole honor among thieves thing. How many movies do we have to watch to learn that the idea of honor among thieves is fictitious? You can't trust a thief. Come on. It says, whoever is simple. People who are simple, they don't look for the truth in things. They don't look for what is real. They don't care. They're lazy. Oh, it's too much trouble to think about the consequences. It's too much trouble to think things through. It's too much trouble. Can't be bothered with it. That's the simple person. Let me just tell you, being simple, it doesn't pay off. It really doesn't. Now, let's address that for just a moment. Paul, I believe it was, and or Peter. I don't have it right in front of me because this just popped into my head. One or both of them have said, strive to live a simple life. Let me see if I can find that real quick, because if Solomon is telling us don't be simple, and the apostles are telling us to go for the simple life, we need to understand the difference. You know, to do or not to do. Okay, let's see if it's in my concordance here. Second Corinthians looks like it's hitting pretty close to it. Let's see. I'm going to try to find it real quick, and if I can't, then I'll abandon it, but I know this is at least one of the verses. I don't know if it's the one that I'm looking for, but let's see. Okay, well, I'm not finding it. The one that I did find is in Second Corinthians. It says, but I fear lest somehow as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, so your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. But the one that I'm thinking of here, I may be able to find it on Google real quick. I want to address that contrast. Um, let's see. Okay. I was looking for First Thessalonians 4:11. Hmm. Well, that doesn't say simplicity. Well, I may try to find it for the next broadcast. But that one just simply says to live a quiet life. Now, there's a difference between a quiet life and a simple life. But anyway, simplicity is taking something that's complex, looking at it on the surface, and thinking you can make it work. All right. It's kind of like looking at a robot and thinking, well, if I take a couple of hoses and a couple of metal boxes and stick them together, it'll be a robot. That's not going to work. You know that's not going to work. I know that's not going to work. Why? Because you're taking something that is inherently complex and you're oversimplifying it. It's not going to work. And there's a lot of situations in life that are just like that. If you take them on a surface level, if you just take them at face value, just like that robot, or like the Transformers movies. Have you ever noticed in the Transformer movies that, you know, how do they get those all those different parts to fit together and to work that way? They don't. That just doesn't work that way. Um, the same thing is true. When we try to oversimplify life, we end up being fools. Okay. Life is complex. And the more that we understand about it, the more we will be able to operate in life in such a way that brings life, godliness, and even wealth. But to take things as a simple person, to be simple. If somebody calls you simple-minded, it's not really a compliment. Because to be simple-minded is to not think things through. Kind of like the definition of reckless, but that's a soapbox I'm not going to get on this morning. So we finished Proverbs chapter 9. Now, at this point, I want to give you a heads up that the rest of the book of Proverbs, for the most part, we're not going to cover chapter by chapter. The first part of Proverbs, he speaks in very large blocks of wisdom and very large blocks of explanations. Throughout the rest of Proverbs, he speaks in 1 to 2 sentences about things. Sometimes he'll string a few verses together, but for the most part, he covers one topic per verse in a lot of cases, or one topic in about 2 or 3 different verses. Okay, so there's going to be times where we're going to read 1 or 2 verses and just stay there because they're just that deep. And then there's going to be times where we're going to cover a whole range of topics all at once because, you know, there's no rhyme or reason to a lot of these. They're not in any particular order that we've been able to figure out. So we are getting into a whole new section of the book of Proverbs and learning wisdom. So before I ramble myself on, let's go ahead and end the podcast. Podcast, videocast, video blog, whatever it is. And I want to invite you to like and subscribe to these videos on YouTube. I need more subscribers, people. The more subscribers I get, the more people will want to subscribe. I think that's the way it works. Anyway, yeah, be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Coffee and Wisdom. And